Welcome, everyone, to the Rants About Humanity podcast. Today I have Zach Rody. Zach Rody is a dating and relationship coach who's going to stir up some controversy about masculinity and femininity and polarity. He's been teaching masculine and feminine polarity mastery to transform relationships and dating experiences. He works with both men and women by giving them the communication tools and specific direction necessary to push through fears that prevent them from showing up as their best self. He coaches men how to step forward and devote their leadership, and he coaches women how to let go and step into the feminine. Welcome on the podcast. Let me just drop a reaction that maybe a lot of people will have, and you will hear this a lot, like, everyone has masculine and feminine energies. Aren't we all a part masculine and feminine?
Yeah, we are. And both of those energies are something that both a man and a woman can develop in themselves, right? You can have a woman who really becomes increasingly masculine, becomes a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, is completely in charge of the household, tells her man what to do, all that stuff. And the same for a man, right? He can become extremely feminine and, just really let go. And the problem is that is not our natural programming. So it's not that you can't do that. We're capable of some incredible things as both a man and as a woman, but it's going to be extremely draining for a woman to do that, right? And it's gonna put her in an early grave, and she's not going to enjoy it, right? She's really not going to enjoy it. And for a man, he's just going to feel increasingly weak if he does that. He's going to get further away from his natural instincts, and he's not going to enjoy it either. So it's not about what you can do, it's about what is natural for you to do.
And how have become the genders or the sexes, how did they have become so estranged from their natural expression?
Well, I think that's due to a lot of indoctrination that's happened in our society. So you can, feminism is certainly going to have played a massive role in that, and schooling as well, and then just social conditioning by parents as they've been conditioned in a certain way from that, where we are, and it happens like in TV as well, the media, movies, all this kind of stuff, where we are essentially being trained and indoctrinated to get further and further disconnected from our natural instincts, our natural programming, to the point where we really believe that who we naturally are is wrong. It's wrong to act in that way.
I actually got red pilled on this topic because I used to be in the PUA community, pickup artist community. Maybe we can hit a bit about it later. And I started delving into the wage gap and feminism. Like Karen Strawn, Girls Write What, Girls Writes What, is one of the people that really red pilled me. And she showed me the truth about feminism and where it comes from. And when I talk about feminism, and maybe you see it differently, you have several waves in feminism. The first and the second was more about equal rights and equal opportunities. But then you have something which I absolutely despise, which is radical feminism, third wave and fourth wave feminism, which is more anti-men. And you even see when you delve deeply into it that it was mostly bored middle-class women who had nothing to do and finally could do the jobs that men were able to do in the past. So then they wanted equal rights because for the vast amount of history, women didn't want to trade jobs with men because they were physically so intense. They were dying in wars. They presented like in history, it was like, such an easy life. That everything that's been written about the subjugation of women and men oppressing women, that there's also a part of an agenda of consumerism, of, when one person is the provider in the household, he can provide, but when you have a man and a woman who are independent, they consume more. And that a lot of the agenda has been focusing on women as victims and men as oppressors. But when you delve deeper into it, it's a lot more complicated and a lot more subtle than that. How did you find out your alignment as a man and some myths maybe that you saw, lies about feminism and masculinity and femininity?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. First, I don't even like to call it feminism because feminism has nothing to do with femininity. It's actually masculinism. It's masculinizing women. Everything that is promoted in feminism is how to be more masculine as a woman. And increasingly so with third wave feminism, but it's really been a progression from the start and getting women increasingly disconnected from their natural feminine energy. And of course, I have no problem with people doing whatever makes them happy, having the right to do whatever. So that part I have no problem with, but it is the programming that that masculine traits in a woman should be celebrated, and it's been increasingly downplayed, and even to the point where it's demonized for a woman to be feminine. It's seen as weak. And so I would say I first got into some of that understanding as well, because I went into the pickup artist community as well. That's how I really started learning the basics of being a man, I could say, though I think there was a lot of things I was misguided on.
Yeah, there's a lot. There were a lot of, I know a lot of people and teachers in the PUA community, and there's a lot of shadows and projection out there. But one of the things that it teaches a lot of men is masculine to feminine communication. And that polarity principle, which I didn't know at all because I was a lost young boy without confidence, without leadership, without an own self. And I know when I speak this, and I think you also know this, that there's a huge crisis of like young men who are like lost and they don't have a sense of self and they don't know how to be a man and they can't get any decent relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and pickup can actually act as a lifeline for those men, right? Because we don't have any of those initiation rituals, anything like our ancestors did, or even just not even rituals, but just learning how to be a man from your father, right? Like that's gone. That for the most part, that's really gone. And so pickup can actually be a lifeline for men who have just spent their entire lives masturbating and playing video games and stuff, and then here is a way to actually become successful with women, right? So in that respect, it's absolutely amazing. I don't know what I would have done or where I would be at this point without learning about that stuff, because it didn't that pickup actually does teach so much about masculine and feminine polarity, even though when I learned it, I never even heard the terms like masculine, feminine, polarity, anything like that. But it is taught, at least indirectly. And so it's very different from what most of what you hear in mainstream books and even coaching and all that kind of stuff. Marriage counseling, certainly.
Yeah, then you get this, what I had. I was a virgin until I was 24, I was depressed. I was suicidal, lost in life. And you know what I became? I became their best friend, their psychologist, the nice guy, And they were complaining about me, about alpha guys, confident guys, But in the end, they end up sleeping with them. And I was like, why are they not picking me? Like, I'm such a nice guy. I'm just a good person to talk to. But I had a low self-image, and clearly something I was doing wasn't working. But I was following, the Hollywood guidelines, the social programming. And that's when I had a lot of self-hatred and a lot of baggage that I had to shed. It was not learning. It was more unlearning, because just as you said, I didn't have any role models.
Yeah, it is unlearning just as much, if not more, than actual learning, right? Because it's this indoctrination that covers up our instinctual programming, right? It's there. If you're actually listening to it, if you're actually listening, for example, as a man, like if you're actually listening to your body when it's telling you that you're irritated with something, that's an opportunity to lead out of it. But we have we've been indoctrinated to the point where we think that these instincts are wrong, that like there's something toxic and terrible about it, and that we shouldn't listen to it, right? And so much about this, and unfortunately, when I learned pickup, I didn't learn much about that. Whereas more about adding things on to you, which can be a problem when if the way that you adopt this stuff is thinking, okay, I'm not good enough the way that I am. I have to like add on all of this stuff to actually be attractive to women. And then it becomes all about tactics and stuff like that. That's a huge problem for men. Instead of it being about undoing so much of that crap and just really finding who you are and just being who you are, setting those boundaries, setting expectations, leading the way that you want as a man, of course. And it's, saying what you want, making judgments, both positive and negative. Like, those are all very masculine things to do. And it's just about it's about accepting yourself, that it's okay to do those things.
Yeah, when I delved into this will sound controversial, but we live in a matriarchy. We live in a matriarchy where almost everything is being decided on feminine principles. The judgment system, the educational system, the majority are women. What are the virtuous principles? It's the feminine. This is what I also blame the spiritual community about. I call it spiritual correctness, because they overvalue the feminine and they don't value the masculine at all. Like, it's not the polarity of both. It's like, how can you be a good man? Be more feminine. That seems to be like the answer, Yeah. And when I look at the polarities, I would say men are more about order, about discernment, about boundaries, about structure, about forward grabbing, about creating worlds, about giving. Women are more about receiving, opening up, about chaos, about letting go, about the exception, about subjectivity. Men are more about reason. Women are more about feeling. Yes, it's a spectrum, but the spectrum that is the masculine spectrum is vastly more present in biological males. And the feminine spectrum by nature is more prevalent in women, right? At least that's how I see it.
Well, and so, and spirituality incredibly has actually helped turn women more into men as well, to a large extent. And of course, it's just amazing the way that this has been done, where men have been, not just in society, right? It's not just like the whole feminism movement and all that stuff, where men have become increasingly feminine and women have become increasingly masculine. There is the exact same thing that's going on in the spirituality community, where men have become increasingly feminine, and that's what we're taught. Yet a lot of women, what they're learning is how to become, we'll call it empowered, right? And where women are becoming increasingly masculinized. But I agree with you that overall in the spiritual community, it is very much focused on, we'll call it feminine principles, the letting go, just accepting everything. There is no truth, right? Like, judgments are like, making judgments are wrong. There is no good and bad, all that kind of stuff. And that's a huge problem. And it's amazing, because on the surface, right, it seems to make so much sense. It can easily suck men into this, well, and women too, right? Because it will often resonate in a really strong way. And so what ended up happening to me is I had been really developing so much of my masculine energy, becoming increasingly masculine in the pickup community, right, for years. And then I really dove into the spiritual community years after, and really began feminizing myself. And of course, there's a lot of benefits to that too. Like, the ability to just be able to accept and be happy no matter what. And, I'm not saying it's all bad, but without understanding who you are as a man and where you should really be headed, it can cause so many problems. And I actually became less successful. Like, if you compared my second year in pickup compared to, say, my 8th, I was actually less successful. And that's also just because I was less interested. But a big part of it was I had just feminized myself without even realizing what I was doing, just accepting things that I shouldn't accept, trying to just be happy about everything. I was still leading, but in we'll say I had like awakened my inner child, my inner boy, to such an extent that I just wasn't being a man the way that I should. We aren't taught how to be a man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching, like, the cultural shift has happened so much. Like, when you look now at the cultural portrayal of strong men, they're almost non-existent. Like, what is a strong masculine role model? Like, it's so much that I protect myself from the Hollywood filth by I just go back to movies from the 60s and 70s, man. I'm watching old James Bond movies again. I'm watching, old Robert De Niro, Al Pacino movies again to see some masculinity like strong leaders. They have negative sides, of course. But nowadays, when I look at this ultra soy boy, feminized, gender queer in all the movies like Star Wars, and then they also want to make a female Ghostbusters, and now I read they want to have a black female James Bond. Like, that's a strong masculine figure. You can have your feminine figures, okay, but that are archetypes, and they're destroying the Humphrey Bogarts, the Marlon Brandos, like all these things that people could look up to. I'm really wondering what is still a strong masculine figure that current day youth and men can still look up to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a huge problem, and what we've also been conditioned within that is, if you look at the masculine, feminine energies, there's some examples in media. I'm not saying there's none, but it's somewhere it's like very unbalanced men where they're just assholes, right? It's like they're masculine, but they're not devotional in any kind of way, so very very unhealthy. And then there is the ones that like all along the spectrum of being, we'll call it balanced, like very balanced in both masculine and feminine energies, or just really, really feminine. There's very few that are really good role models of both. They're extremely strong leaders, right? It's like, no, I'm a man, I'm the one that's making the decisions in a relationship, setting the boundaries, the expectations, I'm leading, but is also devotional in the sense of, I'm ultimately doing this for you to make you happy, to protect you emotionally and physically. That's rare. It's rare. So we don't see it. And so we don't realize that's something that men should be moving towards.
And when you say that men have to make the decisions in relationship, it's going to be something controversial. But when I look in reality, what women are attracted to, you have something which is hypergamy, where women date up the status ladder. Most women, they want a man they can look up to. Doesn't only have to be money, can be status or whatever, like they're most attracted to their man when he's like standing as an element, when he's being a status symbol, when they look up to them. In general, most women want a guy that's higher than them in terms of status, and power, because that is something that is erotic to them. For men in general, I don't care about the profession of a woman. She doesn't have to be a super successful business manager. She can be an empathic, cute girl that works in a supermarket. Like, in general, I don't care about that. But when you really look at relationship, especially working relationship, where the polarity is nice, you will see that the man is leading and the man is being a success symbol and the woman is looking up to the man. A lot of women can listen to this and say, like, I don't agree. I don't care what you think. I'll look at what works. And when I see what works in the vast majority of cases, this is the pattern that is working and creates a fulfilling, integrated relationship.
Right. Yeah. And so this is part of the brainwashing on both sides for men and women, right? And so from the woman's perspective, they are indoctrinated, women are indoctrinated to believe that it is, well, I mean, both genders really are, that it's disrespectful, that they're dishonoring themselves in some way if they just step back and allow a man to lead, right? Because we've been conditioned to believe that somehow when you, like, whoever is leading, whoever is making the decisions, first, that they are superior in some way, and then second, that they must just be subjugating the person who's following, right? Because what other possibility is there? But that's not true. And if you look at, most forms of dance, like look at salsa dance, for example, is the man superior because he's leading the dance? Is he being an asshole and just like thrashing the woman around and making her have a terrible time? No, he's dancing for her. He's dancing to show her an amazing time, to lead so that she can just let go and relax in her feminine energy and just follow. And that's the piece that's missing. It's devoted leadership, right? So, in my relationship, I'm the one that's making all the decisions, right? And I'm not saying every single decision, but when it comes to something that's impacting both of us, I'm the one that's making the decision on it. I'm the one that's leading. I'm setting the boundaries, the expectations for the relationship. I'm choosing who is doing what chores. I'm choosing, like what's right and wrong, like how we're going to interact with each other, how we're going to treat each other. But here's the thing. When I am leading, I am always extremely concerned about how my woman feels, right? How she feels. I want her experience in the relationship to be amazing. I want her to be having a good time. I want her to feel respected. I want her to feel happy. I want her to feel safe, right? So I'm always thinking about those things. I'm always anticipating her needs and her feelings, and she's communicating to me what her feelings are so that I know, so that I can lead better. So a man is not superior just because he's leading. He's just different. I call it dominant, right? So he's dominant in the relationship, but that doesn't mean he's better. He's just better at being dominant. A woman is better at being radiant. Those are two very different things. But when together, both in a healthy way, both partners get their needs met. And it's beautiful, just like in a salsa dance. That's what a relationship should look like.
Yeah, I love that analogy with like dancing. It's also the woman can let go and she can trust. And the guy, is a protector, a provider. He creates like boundaries in which she can express herself. It's like, oh my God, I'm so free, And the guy sometimes escapes his mental realm by seeing that bodily expression, and flow of the woman is like, wow, you inspire each other without becoming each other, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think one of the biggest hangups that women have it's like that sounds so beautiful, right? But what women have often experienced is something very different, right? So I call that when a woman is just letting go, that she is submitting to her man's leadership. But what women have often experienced is they have been subjugated in a relationship. Call it subjugated is one big problem, right? Where the man he's not leading with devotion. He's not leading as a gift for her, right? Like when I think of my expectations, boundaries, things I wanted my woman to do, I'm energetically offering those things as a gift, right? I'm trying to make our relationship better. Whereas a man who is subjugating a woman, he is doing it in a way where he is energetically taking from her, right? He needs her submission for his own ego, so that he can feel superior in some kind of way, right? He needs that, otherwise he can't feel good. So it's not as a gift. And then what women will often do, they'll dishonor themselves by submitting to things that don't feel good over and over and over again. And many will end up losing themselves in the process, right? They don't even know who they are anymore. And so that is 100% different than what I'm talking about. So for any of your women listeners, that's subjugation. That is not healthy submission. In healthy submission, you don't lose yourself at all. You actually find yourself, probably for the first time.
A great analogy I heard was by Elliot Halls. Don't agree with his teachings completely nowadays, but used to be a big follower, where he compares it to the sexual organs. For a man to function, he has to have an erection, which means you get excited, but not too excited that you quickly come. But you also have to be confident to get an erection, right? And you build up energy in yourself, and then you can keep that energy itself and have an erection. And then what does a woman do? She opens up. She invites the man in. And then you give the energy of yourself to a woman, and it becomes a dance of polarities. And the longer it takes, the more the man gets like energetically depleted, and the more the woman says like, more, give it to me, So it's an exchange of energy, while a narcissistic asshole would be like, I'm just going to discharge and use it as an object, which maybe would be like subjugating women, right? But also here you see the polarities of giving, exchanging energy, and the man charging himself up from the world and then giving to a woman. While when you look at what actually turns a woman the most on, she's very narcissistic, because the biggest turn on for the woman is the guy getting turned on by her, right? That's the biggest aphrodisiac. So even here in the sexual play, you kind of see like the polarities and the dance of energies.
Well, I guess we would be narcissists too then, because what I was going to say is, sex is a fantastic example, maybe even better than dancing, where if you look at selfish guys, right, just like you say, they see a woman, it's like, I just want to come in her, right? This is all about me. I don't really care about her experience, right? So that's selfish leadership. That's not devoted leadership. Devoted leadership is, oh, like I want to have sex with this woman. And a huge part of my motivation is I just want to make her happy. I just want to give her pleasure because it just makes me so happy to see her so happy, right? So when a devoted, caring man is having sex with a woman, yes, he's feeling good because his cock feels good, right? But it's so much more than that. He feels so good because he is seeing how his actions are positively impacting his woman, right? Like it is a turn on to like, as you're having sex with a woman, to see her just open up and, be so expressive, making amazing sounds, all of that stuff. And that actually energizes him. So he is energetically giving to her. It's like, you're having sex with her, you're penetrating her.
Yes, taking charge and giving charge, right?
Sorry?
He's taking charge and he's giving charge.
Yeah, he's taking charge and he's giving charge. And then as he's giving to her, right, he's energetically giving to her, but then he's energetically getting so much back as he feels so received by what by his gifts, right? By seeing how she's enjoying them. And then he gets energized and then he just wants to give more. And then she lights up more and is expressive. And then he gets that back. And it's the same cycle in a healthy relationship where a man just wants to give her his gifts, right? And through his leadership. And when it makes her happy, he feels good and then wants to give more of those gifts. But it's got to, and this is the key, it's got to be through his leadership. If he's giving through his submission, right? Like when his woman is saying like, hey, I want you to do this, and she's leading him, that does not feel good for him. He will never want to do that. He might do the thing, but he'll never feel good about it.
Bro, that is what most men don't get. When I look around, like men in their 30s and 40s, they look like castrated puppies. They've been castrated. They thought that it would make their wife happy by giving them what they want. And as soon as they gave them what they want, is not interested anymore. Anymore. It's like cat string theory, right? Like you play with a string with a cat, and you twist it around and the cat has to work to get it. The cat keeps on playing. But when you put it right in front of the paws, it just walks away. So then you become the child in the relationship. Then you're not hard to get anymore. Then she's more caretaking of you, right? So that is why often men are disillusioned. Like, she kept on nagging to not visit my boys or do this hobby or do this thing that purely I do for me. And then they gave it up. And then that woman becomes silently resentful. And the dynamic and the sexual energy between them goes away. And he's thinking like, why is this happening? I thought I gave her what she wanted and she was telling me, nagging me, and I finally cave in.
Yeah. So let's talk about hard to get, because that's really interesting, especially because that's a huge component of the pickup community. And I just want to explain this because it can actually really lead men astray in a really bad way, right? Where they get into the mindset of trying to make the woman chase him. And when that happens, he's actually forcing her to step into her masculine energy to do that, right? She should not be in the chasing role. But I also don't call when a man's in the chasing role, he's being a bitch, right? He's just like, chasing after her good energy. And so I don't like the word chasing to describe a healthy dynamic between a man and woman at all. What I say is a man should be leading, right? So there is no plain hard to get. What there is a man is leading. He's only giving gifts to his woman when it's through his leadership, right? So if a woman's like, hey, I want you to do this, he's like, I don't care what you want, right? I'm not going to submit to your leadership. And what a healthy, dominant, devoted man is going to do is lead her into feminine expression, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to, I don't care what you want. I'm not going to submit to that, but I do want to know how you feel. Right? How are you feeling in this moment? You're feeling really crappy because I haven't spent much time with you. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go take you on a date, because now he can give it as a gift, right? Or another example, which is going to be probably quite controversial, a man who leads his woman to always ask permission for things, right? If she wants something. So instead of, hey, get me a coffee, it's, hey, can I have a coffee? energetically, it's completely different. The first is leading. The second is just submitting to whatever, like she will respect whatever decision he decides, right? So when it's permissive, he gets to still lead. It still feels good. And a man loves doing things for, like, the healthy masculine loves doing things for a woman, right? But it's got to be through his leadership. Otherwise, he's dishonoring himself. His woman is just going to lose so much respect for him, and she's going to, she's going to be out of there. She's not going to want to have sex with him anymore. She's going to be looking at other guys. And so this is the energetic exchange when we're both man and woman are respecting themselves and each other, is when a man is devoted to his woman. He's giving her gifts, but it's always through his leadership, and he's not letting his woman lead.
Now, how do you balance this? Because I'm going to give an example, right? You could act like you do these directive commands because it's a masculine way of asking a question. You could wait 2 days to send a message because that's not needy. But you know what? Every man who's been through that process, especially with the messages, you can send the perfect message, but the energy and the frame for which you send it energetically will make sure it's being perceived as desperate or clingy or not. It's not about the message. It's a place where you send it from. So let's say I hear Zach right now in this podcast, and I'm like, yes, now I'm going to give directive commands. Isn't that way still like a very reactive way because you're doing it to get a certain reaction? When does it actually become more natural and fluent and part of your genuine, authentic expression?
Okay, so that's a great question. So first of all, masculine energy is always trying to get outcomes. Okay, that's what the masculine energy does. The feminine energy is not trying to get outcomes. So there's nothing wrong with trying to get an outcome. It's only a problem when you're trying to get an outcome for your own ego, essentially. And so when I learned pickup, luckily within a year, one of the biggest things I learned was how to be authentic when I'm leading, right? And unfortunately, I went way too deep into that and just became authentic with everything, and just, took that far more seriously than the leading part, which is really important too. So when you are trying to get an outcome, you can try to get an outcome, and the outcome's to give a gift. And you can give an outcome to try to energetically take. And the best way I can illustrate this, because this is going to apply for everything in relationships, texting, whatever, you name it, meeting women. When I first started meeting women, what I noticed was sometimes they'd respond really well to me, and sometimes they'd respond not so well or bad. And the difference was whether I was energetically giving or energetically taking. So I'd go up to a girl and be like, hey, you know what? I think you're really pretty. Mm-hmm. You can feel into that energy when a man does that, where it's like you're doing that to try to get something back, mm-hmm. right? Like you want her approval, you want her time, you want her energy, you want her smile, for your own ego, for your own identity. And she's going to feel that, and it's going to be like, ooh, gross, right? It says so many negative things when you communicate that you need to be an energetic taker. But you can say those exact same words, and I have literally thousands of times, like, hey, you know what, you're so beautiful, I wanted to meet you. And her smile just lights up from ear to ear. She's so happy. She's like, oh my God, okay, blah, blah, blah. She turns around, and I'm talking about anywhere, right? In the middle of the day, in a mall, on a sidewalk, in a bar, doesn't matter. And she's so happy because what are you communicating? You're communicating that you are so full of value. You are just overflowing, and you just want to give gifts, right? You don't need anything from her. Energetically, you just want to give. And so she's going to respond really well to that, right? Because that's saying like it's saying so many positive things about you being a man. And you not needing anything from anyone, and you're not just going to be a clingy little bitch if I continue talking to you and get you get my number and all that kind of stuff, right? And so the difference is, both attempts are about trying to get an outcome, but one is just giving value to someone, and the other is pretending to give value to someone, but really you're just trying to manipulate them to try to get that value from them.
Yeah, and what I see right now with the dating rules, it's immensely confusing because basically what they're saying is we want to police the seduction, the social rules for any guy we don't like. But if it's a guy that we like, we want him to take the initiative to kiss me unexpectedly, to seduce me, and be confident. Like, how can you have rules like these apply to everybody I don't like, but when I like someone, they like when a guy takes a risk to go for the kiss? Because let's be honest, a girl can say, oh my God, that guy tried to kiss me, and she will laugh it off with her girlfriends and feel a bit fucked up maybe for an hour. But that guy who had the balls to kiss, and maybe he's starting in his journey, that guy sometimes, when he doesn't work on himself, he will feel shame for months or even years by being rejected. And that pain, that embarrassment is never talked about.
No, and it's so important. And that's actually, that's how I started my entire journey with pickup and becoming a man, where, a girl had broken up with me. I was like a World of Warcraft girlfriend. That was how bad my life was. And it's just kind of dark. I want to brighten this up. And then I'm like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm gonna learn some stuff here. I'm going to become more masculine. I didn't have the term for it, but I'm gonna learn how to talk to girls. I'm going to do like online dating, right? And I'll get this figured out. And so I spent like days and days just scouring. I don't know why, just amazing how different I was back then. But I spent forever just looking for the perfect woman, right? I'm like, just by her profile. I'm like, I just ignored everybody else, found this perfect woman, messaged her. Amazingly, I was able to set up a date with her. So we went on a date. It was great. I had a 2-hour conversation. That was like the best conversation I'd ever had in my life. I had no idea how to talk to people back then. Tried to kiss her at the end of the date, did that cheek turn thing. Oh, you know what? I think we're just better off as friends. Some BS, try to let me down easy. And I went home and I just beat myself up emotionally so badly, right? Just, oh, Zach, you're so stupid. Why did you do that? Of course she didn't want to kiss you, on and on and on, cried for hours about it. Because, I was 23 at that time, and I didn't lose my virginity till 23. So about the same time as you. And this was like, I was already so desperate. And it was just like one more confirmation that's like, I'm going to die alone as a virgin, no children, no girl is ever going to.
Bro, I had the exact same thing, man. I was really thinking and I was so in my head and so insecure and so playing the role that when I was sexual with a girl in the beginning, I couldn't even have an erection because I was putting so much pressure on myself. And I was thinking it's biological, I will never have a girlfriend, etc. Until I had a very good experience and it opened me up. But that shame and guilt and self-hatred and self-doubt, I think most women can't understand how deep that can go and how deep those wounds can be.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It can destroy men, especially if it's, for me, I consider myself really lucky actually, because some men, they just deal with this over and over again for years until they just completely give up, right? Because they never find a way to heal themselves, to fix themselves, to become men. And it just soul destroying. For me, I only had a few situations with women earlier on in my earlier 20s and my late teens that, they liked me for a while. I eventually blew it. I did actually kiss a few girls, never got much further. It was a few days and then they didn't like me anymore, that kind of thing. But, and I just try to get by playing video games and focusing on university. And then it was the most recent experiences that I just mentioned, right? The online, I tried online dating and, I'd broken up with the World of Warcraft girlfriend. And then it was after that, beating myself up that one time, I'm like, okay, I've got to get this figured out. I kind of just, after having that big cry, I'm like, okay, I don't care what it takes. I need to figure out what's wrong with me. And then there was this guy that was in my email. I don't know how he ended up there, but I'm sure you know him. David D'Angelo.
Mm-hmm. Right? Evan Pagan. Yeah. He turned into marketing.
You're dating. Yeah. And I read a few of his emails before, but when men really aren't willing to make that change, this is the thing. It's such a huge decision to be like, to admit like, you know what, I suck with women. I need to get this figured out. that they would rather just screw themselves over again and again and again instead of just doing the work, investing in themselves, because it's like on some subconscious level, they know, like, you know, it's going to be too painful to do this change. So I'm just going to continue to experience the pain I'm already dealing with. Right. But, you know, I had enough of that pain at that point. I was like, I will do anything. So I started reading, right? He was already in my email. I'd read a few things and I'm like, all right, you know, I'm just going to invest in his programs. So I bought all his DVDs, all his ebooks, or I bought his ebooks first and then his DVDs. And then I spent thousands of dollars on pickup stuff and psychology stuff over the next year in 2 pickup courses. So probably like $8,000 in total. Because I was just like, I will do anything now. I had gotten to that level of pain where it's like, I've hit rock bottom. I am pathetic in every way as a man. I will do anything to get this figured out. I don't care how much pain it causes me. I don't care how much time. I'm going to change my life. Right. And that's what men, unfortunately, you know, a lot of men, they have to hit that level, that rock bottom level, before they're like, okay, I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to make that change. And then once I did, you know, within a year, you know, I had slept with a whole bunch of women, which I know a lot of men kind of need to get out of their system. You know, I had found a girlfriend that I really, really liked. Didn't work out in the end, but it lasted longer than my longest relationship, which was a few days. And just everything made sense. My life was completely different. But it was because I made that change, and only because I hit rock bottom.
Yeah. That was one of the first posts that I made on my blog. Why you have to hit rock bottom to change your life, because you tried everything and then you just, in the end, you keep on hitting the wall and you can't keep on blaming the wall. It's you hitting the wall. What sometimes surprises me is that indeed people try to do it all by themselves, but they know that their current identity is not helping them. I reflected about that yesterday. If you would take a look at how many time, hours, and effort guys spend on, you know, dating apps and sending messages, and partly if they would get the right coach, A, but B, put the same effort maybe into self-development or building their own business, the amount of time, focus, and energy, they would get a better girl, they would be more stable, and they would also be more successful.
Yeah. And you know, this is going to be a bit of self-promotion and be like, listen, you should probably hire me, or at least somebody else. Right. But I took a sales course recently, right? Because I have my own business, right? I'm teaching men how to do this as well as women, their side of things. And a great thing that I really learned in that course is such a great quote. The biggest cost in your business is the money that you're not making. Right. And so basically what it's saying is, you know, yeah, taking a sales course or hiring a mentor is going to cost you money, but it's a tiny cost compared to all the money that you're not making by not hiring help to really grow. Right. And it's the same with meeting women, where it's like, how much money are you wasting on dates every month? How much time are you wasting that you could be spending, you know, either in an intangible thing like with a girlfriend and having sex with her, or working on your business and making tons of money, right? How much is all that pain that you're experiencing worth to you that you could be not experiencing that, right? And so I look at the $8,000 that I spent with those courses and all that material. It's nothing. Right? If I could have told my 17-year-old self, like, listen, just spend $50,000, right? When I was 15, I actually had like 30 grand in stocks and stuff. Just cash all that shit out, spend all of your money learning this stuff right now, save yourself all that time and grief and you know, masturbating by yourself that you're having to do, instead of having an incredible relationship, having incredible experiences with women. It's insignificant, the investment that you're going to spend to actually get help, instead of figuring it out on your own and wasting years of your life doing the wrong things and money.
And I think it's also a journey, because what I notice, I see this a lot in guys who get acquainted with stepping into their masculine or PUA or seduction, learning how to relate to women, is when it's the first thing that people learn about self-development, they also, and I think it's not beneficial, but they have to go to that journey. They have their sole focus on everything dating, everything seduction, you know, And when you want to point them towards business or towards, lifestyle, everything is just to get women, which gets you, invested, and you have that focus. But after a while, I'm telling you guys, after a while, you see that your current focus is not working and you take some time off, you integrate other aspects, and you know what, paradoxically, when you don't need it so much anymore, but you still take action and you have other pillars in your life, then you will see you're also more successful. But they're so maniacally focused on getting women in that seduction, which is partly because, oh my God, this is awesome, that I try to steer them toward other aspects and like, dude, it's all you focus on. But, it takes a while. And that intense focus is just on one thing. I don't know if you had the same experience, but.
Yeah. And I'm cool with guys going either way, to be honest. Like, I spent a decade literally just pretty much learning pickup and dating and all, because I was just obsessed with it, right? And, I taught pickup for a while too, like helping men. I worked on a few things, but actually having really caring about my business and like a purpose and things like that, it just wasn't a focus. And if it had been a focus, that probably really would have helped me as well. But it's hard to, when it's like, this stuff can be a drug. Right?
Yeah, this is what I noticed with the PUA community, that they say like, you shouldn't get girls to get validation, but everything that they use in their videos and social proof is just validation and social proof. So that is often what people mistake, I think, with the pickup artist lifestyle, is that is their job. That is their lifestyle. Most of the guys that I know, especially when they start out, they just want to have a caring, good relationship. They're like good guys, but they, got hurt in life and became a bit resentful, and they're working on themselves. But some guys fall into the trap of having that same old superficial experience of seduction, having sex with the same kind of superficial women. You can have 1,000 sexual short experiences with 1,000 women, or can have 1,000 deep experiences with like a special partner, and you really go deep. And you need probably the repetition, like sleeping with women, knowing that you can do it. But after a while, you have the law of marginal gains, and it becomes the same old. And then at least you want something that goes deeper. So that sometimes is the trap of looking at the lifestyle of those pickup artists and then thinking, I want the same thing.
Yeah, because and you can look at how that can affect men in other areas too, right? With like making money, for example. Like more money is never enough. And it's the same. It can be the same with superficial sexual experiences, and I've certainly gone through that myself. Right? Like I definitely have. And some guys, like some of my wingmen, they're still there. I don't even know if they're ever going to change, but. After a year of doing that, I was like, I want a girlfriend. And I had a kind of what ended in a really bad experience. And then I kind of just continued I got to the point for a while that I never wanted to settle down. And then after a few years of that, I'm like, no, I definitely do. And I set my intention for it, and then met my wife like a month later, I think, or a few weeks later. But yeah, I think that it can really be a trap for men, and that's a problem, because like honestly, I can say, all my I'm not saying it wasn't fun. Like I had a ton of fun having sex with a bunch of women and just being completely free and all that kind of stuff. But looking back at it, I realized so much of that was because I wasn't healed as a man to begin with, and I thought I was. That's the big trap, is I thought I was, because I was just so happy all the time, and like life was really amazing, and I didn't really have any issues. But I actually did have a core wound about being energetically stingy and not really wanting to. I didn't really have much of a feeling of devotion. I liked making girls happy, but I didn't have that feeling of responsibility of like, I really want to devote to a woman and just make her happy and protect her and love her and all that kind of stuff. Even after I got married, right? Like for the first few years of my marriage, I didn't have that either. And then once that shifted, like the person that I am now, the man that I am now, just sex with random women is nothing by comparison. Like the feeling of being responsible and just devoting to a woman who like a a high self-worth woman who's beautiful and submits to my leadership, and you know, we can just keep making our relationship deeper as time goes on, that's a million times better. And so, but it can be hard to have that perspective when you're not in it, right?
Yeah, I resonate a lot with what you've been through, and I still want to focus on the topic of, you know, being a virgin until you're 23 and having those relationships, you know, being non-existent before that period. I'm just going to share my experience, and maybe you resonate with some of these. I also have these core wounds about worthiness and safety and autonomy. So, pattern, I'm working on it, but it's still there. Like, man, I was 20, you were 23, I was 24. I felt I wasn't worth anything. I felt I could never rely on anyone. I felt like alone. I felt betrayed. I felt, you know, I can't trust women. So a part of me still finds it hard to be with a woman, you know, because it feels like I will better be by myself, because then I don't get hurt. Or a kind of, in the pickup stage beginning, a kind of revenge about, yeah, women fucked around with me, now I'm just gonna fuck around with women, right? So I acknowledge that shadow that's there, because we can talk about tactics and self-development and reading books, but when 23 years or 24 years you've been wrestling with yourself and having these core wounds, I mean, they always come out in relationships, especially in intimate situations. So I know that pattern is still there. So that's something that I'm still wrestling with and acknowledging that that's there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because ultimately, right, it's the inner game stuff that really, really matters. It's the outer game stuff that sounds really fun, right? Like, oh, I'm going to learn a bunch of tactics, and, you know, like, oh, I just need this. And the marketing for it just is so seductive in itself, right? Like, just need this one line. We're not gonna tell you what it is. You'll have to pay for this ebook or whatever, and then we'll give it to you. And then girls are just gonna chase you and love you and want to have sex with you all the time. So it's like the outer game stuff that just sounds like magic, but it's the inner game stuff that, first of all, it's what's going to make you happy, and it's going to be what actually makes a functional relationship possible. Because yeah, good luck having a relationship if all you've learned is tactics and strategies and lines, and you still believe that, you know, you're not worthy, that, you know, women are all going to run away from you, and worse, that the only reason the woman is with you is because of all the lines and strategies that you learned, right? Because you can't keep doing those in a relationship.
Bro, that was just a painful part in the pickup journey. But like, yeah, as long as you have material, then you're interesting. And then when it's gone, she rejects you. So end result, if I'm being me, I get rejected, which cuts even deeper, you know?
Yeah. And so it's so important to understand how your identity is built, right? Because this is the big problem that happened in the pickup community, and it ended up being a split. I don't know how deep you've gone with the whole mystery Tyler Durden thing, but, you know, I learned from the whole mystery method thing first, which is all about lines, strategies, tactics. It's all manipulation, right? It is 100% manipulation. And if you develop your identity in that way, then yeah, all you are going to believe is that inside and the core of you, the only reason women are attracted to you is because of the lines and strategies, not because of who you are. And then having a fulfilling relationship's impossible. Like, you'll just try your best to keep manipulating, but you'll never be able to hold it together. And then there was eventually a split where Tyler Durden went the other direction. And because that's what he realized. He had that realization, and then realized, like, wow, all I am is, like, deep down underneath all of that stuff, I'm just an empty shell of a man, right? I don't believe that I can attract women and keep women. And so that's where the authenticity piece came from, right? That I talked about earlier, about it's about giving, not about trying to take. Because the taking thing is like when you give a line and it's like when you get really good at it, when you're bad at it, women sense it immediately, right? Oh, he's just trying to take from me. When you get really good at taking, which is manipulation, you learn how to take from a woman, right? Try to manipulate her attraction level to you without her knowing it. So you become like a master manipulator. And that's what much of the pickup community is. And it's never going to get you what you want. And what men have to switch to is learning how to be like authentic and genuine, where you are actually just leading by giving gifts, right? Hey, oh, I just think you're so beautiful. I just wanted to meet you, because you mean it, because it's your truth, not because you're trying to get a reaction from her. And then, hey, let's go over here. I really like you, because you mean it and you want to go over there here with her, right? It's not because you're trying to build attraction every step of the way. It's because it's your leadership is an extension of who you are. And that can be a lot more scary, because now it's not about a pickup costume. It's about you. And getting rejected for you that hurts more than getting rejected for a costume.
Yeah. And I think it has to do more with self-centeredness, not being egoistical or being not so much affected or being more detached, because that's a misconception that a lot of people have. Oh, women like assholes. Well, there's certain traits that assholes have, but you don't have to be an asshole to, be interested to women. But they have a kind of self-centeredness. They speak their truth. They're confident. They're bold. They're straightforward. You don't have to be an asshole, but because we are in an age where masculinity or boldness or directness is not being honored, the chances that they're being approached and it's an asshole are bigger, because it's the only guys who are still approaching you and there to take a risk. So you have a very wrong sample and then think it is all men, but you get a very specific sample of men who still dare to approach you.
Yeah, that is such a great point. And it's actually bringing up a thing for me where in pickup, even though I learned how to be really authentic, and thank goodness for that, but I developed what I unconsciously developed is I started to believe that I had to be kind of really self-interested and we'll call it non-devotional for women to stay attracted to me. And so I just became quite focused on myself, right? I didn't care as much about a woman's experience as I should, because I picked up on the idea somewhere that if I did, that she would lose attraction for me, that like attraction was actually coming from me being selfish and making myself energetically like up here and she's down here. That didn't mean I treated women like shit, but I treated myself as a higher priority, where in a truly healthy relationship and for dating too, right? It's you are very masculine, but you are devotional at the same time. So you're caring about her experience. You're leading everything because you care about her experience, but you're also essentially commanding respect for yourself at the same time, where you're not going to be letting her lead. You're not going to be letting her try to control the situation. And that's how you get a woman who is both attracted to you and respects you, while she also really feels like, a princess. Like she feels amazing about herself, because it's like, wow, this really high value man is doing all these amazing things for me. And
what do you think is the role of vulnerability or talking about emotions with women? Your emotions.
A man being vulnerable?
Yes.
I don't think that he should at all. And I've taken that kind of all the way in the other direction, where I've learned to, because a lot of pickup coaches will actually teach men to share their feelings about everything all the time and all that kind of stuff as a way to open her up. And I just think that's bullshit now. I think that, I don't know where they got that from, but you're being feminine when you do that. You're stepping really into your feminine energy. And you're actually forcing a woman to hold space for that. You're forcing her into her masculine. And so I don't think that men should. I think that men get their needs met by leading, right? Telling a woman what he wants her to do, essentially. And then a woman gets her needs met by being vulnerable, expressing her feelings. So a man's role, even from the get-go, but especially in a relationship, is to lead his woman to express her feelings about everything, about his leadership, about like how she feels in the relationship, everything, and make her feel comfortable to do that.
What do you think of female leaders? Like nowadays, it says like, yeah, if the world would only have more female leaders, the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, well, so that's complete bullshit for multiple reasons. Again, I don't care what women want to do. I mean, everyone is free to do whatever the hell they want with their life. I think that mindset is just pure indoctrination. it's funny because, it the women leaders, the ones who are leading, they're extremely masculine, right? So they're like,
Even
what is
physically,
the
right? Even physically,
yeah
their skin is like leather, right?
yeah. So what is the difference, right? What is the difference between, say, a not feminine, but female, say, president of the United States and a male president, right? You look at Hillary Clinton. She's more masculine than 95% of the men that I know, right? That, like, so there's no, and she's like a sociopath, just like most politicians are. So absolutely not. Women leaders are not going to make the world a better place. The ones that are in positions of power are definitely not making the world a better place. And and
Yeah, I don't know
women
where they
who are
give this
truly
evidence
feminine
that
have no interest in being leaders.
I don't get it, where they get this evidence from, that yeah, when female leaders would be there, it would be a better place. You had the old female leader in Brazil, you have, Christine Lagarde of the IMF, you have bad female leaders, you have good female leaders. But indeed, maybe it's how we have leaders and a capitalist system, etc. But you need to have masculine traits right now to run a fantastic big organization or a multi-billion dollar company. But they now say, yeah, when it's a woman, by default she will be a better leader, but there's like no evidence for it. So I'm wondering, why is that? Plus, I mean, that's what I see. Most of these women, they seem unfulfilled and unhappy.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
the same as you. Women can choose anything that they want. I'm just saying, choose something that makes you feel fulfilled. And in general, on a biological level, women rather have a social role, mother, or social things that they do that fulfills them. That's also biologically what they've mostly been doing. That's what they're good at. They're also good at raising children. I'm not negating what they can do. I'm just saying the most happy women in flow, in intuition, expressive, often don't do these high CEO working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and then replacing their motherhood with hiring 3 nannies. In essence, that is not what makes women more fulfilled, because we see this in the research. Despite the opportunity for women having vastly improved the last 30, 40 years, every decade they become increasingly more unhappy and unsatisfied. Even so much so that the biggest reason for the ending of relationships is not women not being happy, but they're not being happy enough. And a lot of divorces are being instigated by women. So I'm just asking, is it really making you fulfilled? Or are you just following the propaganda that you have to do it? Because just as you said, and that's so strange with feminism, they define success on masculine standards.
Yeah.
That's so ironic. Like,
Yeah.
even physically, when you watch these radical feminists, they're lesbian, LGBTQ, they look like a man, and they're so estranged from that fluid feminine, only fluid in their gender spectrum, that it's so strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, first of all, I think like being a mother is the most important job in the world. And it has been so, what's the word? Not demonized, but just like looked down upon as like, that's, I'm going to go be a doctor instead of a mother, when like you being a mother and creating healthy children, like emotionally and physically children, and keeping them out of those indoctrination centers that we call schools, and giving them an incredible head start in their life with high self-esteem, like high self-worth, knowing who they are, and actually teaching, like helping them learn things that are actually useful. Like you think that being a doctor or being a lawyer or being something like that is more important than that role when you're bringing children into the world? No, I don't think so. I think that we really need to get back to creating a society where women realize that, that mothering their children, that there's no more important job in the world. And, it's probably going to be one of two things, right? You're either going to do that and really take that job seriously, or your kids are going to spend decades being screwed up, trying to unscrew up, like become unscrewed up, essentially, right? And a lot of money and therapy and pickup courses and whatever else is going to be involved in that. And I'm not saying, that's what a woman has to do. A woman can do whatever she wants, but I think for
But
the
this is
sake of
what the
children.
masculine does, and this is what postmodernism did. They threw away universalistic principles, and they threw away also generalistic principles. What we're talking about is something essentially masculine. We are providing an orientation to the world that in general is true. That doesn't mean there's no room for exceptions or you can choose differently, but we're giving you a map that in general is very reliable and will provide like a framework. So in general, a stable family, a man and a woman in the family, in the household, two parents, is much more stable, provides much more healthy, psychologically healthy children. Nowadays, we live in the age of the disposable male. It's almost like it's an option. Single mom is being celebrated while it's the biggest predictor of psychological issues. Again, a lot of single moms will say like, yeah, but my son is fine. That's fine. In general, this research is overwhelming that a child needs both parents. It's not hard to understand. It's already training with two parents with time and energy and to devote yourself to the child. And now they act like everything is just an option, right? You have a buffet of options on an individual level. You can fuck and date everything that you like. A child identifies as whatever they want. They don't even need two parents. And we're creating a lot of unstable children, people, which creates unstable families, which creates unstable communities, which creates an unstable world. So I think there really should be a focus on restoring traditional identities, things that actually during centuries have provided a stable basis. And this is also one of the agendas that they often do, the attack on the nuclear family. All the identities, white, Western, male, heterosexual, Catholic, everything that provides a stable foundation, it has to be destroyed. And it's such a pity because it provides some stability against all the chaos in the world. And if you have endless choices, that is chaos. You don't know how to navigate. It's completely overwhelming. So that is often what the masculine provides. Some structure, some roadmap, some principles that help you navigate the world. Instead of saying, you can do whatever you want, you can choose whatever you want, you can be whatever you want. And it sounds good on the surface, but it's just completely overwhelming and you don't know who you are, who you belong to, or how you should function in the world.
Yeah. And in large part too, like to give women some, I got to be clear that so much of this is because of men not really stepping up, right? And it's really a co-created reality. But when you live in a reality when men have not fully stepped up and like, I want to be, the sole provider, really set strong boundaries, expectations, all that stuff, then you've got women who feel unsafe and feel like they need to be taking care of themselves because who else is going to? Right. And then they need to step more into their masculine energy and become a lawyer or become whatever else. And men feel they either feel really, they do feel unsafe to lead, and that can either be conscious or unconscious, right? Where they don't even realize that they're afraid of it because they're so conditioned to not having balls.
How do you initiate a man into being more masculine and initiate a woman into letting go? Because I got a question from my audience, and I often see this in women. They're so hardened, they're so masculinized, they're not in touch with that fluid, feminine, flexible, open receiving state. Can they immediately jump to being feminine, or have to work first with like trauma and condition themselves, shadow work, etc., to open up and then become more flexible, while a man becomes like more a leader, more structure, more disciplined, more focused? Like, do you have some tools, some processes, some things that people could use to go on this hero or heroine's journey?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So, I'm not going to say that I have the only method or anything. There's plenty of methods to do this, but the way that I believe is the most effective is to really get your mindset and communication really dialed in. And so for a man, I'll tell you from my experience, right? And I'm helping other men do the same thing. When I started learning about pickup, what really changed things for me is when I got my communication and mindset dialed in. So just like I'd go up to that woman, say, hey, I think you're gorgeous. I just wanted to meet you, right? What am I doing? I'm being extremely dominant like bold, right? Like I'm telling a woman exactly what I think of her. And then I'm going to be leading her. And all of that is with the mindset, the energetics of gift giving, right? Like I'm trying to give you a gift. And so it's very strong language. So making judgments on a woman and her behavior, like including negative, hey, that's disrespectful. Don't do that, right? And positive leading as well, telling her what to do. So when you get that language figured out, you really start to get your energy kind of follows suit, right? If you get the words right, but you're not doing it to take, right? You do it to give, and you get the right words, then you can get into your masculine energy and become increasingly dominant as a leader. And what it's going to end up doing, as long as you continue to lead towards what you want, a whole bunch of shit's going to come up for you, right? Like the number of times where girls have rejected me and like I didn't get what I want and just stuff came to the surface and I cried like a little baby, that was a big part of my journey. So I ended up healing so much of that stuff on the way, along with developing my masculine skills and becoming more dominant as a man. And then the same thing for women starts with feminine communication, right? And the biggest part of that, there's so much to it, but the biggest part of feminine communication is being vulnerable, right? Just a simple statement like, instead of telling a man what to do or asking him for things or judging his behavior, just what is the feeling that you're feeling? I feel insecure. I feel insignificant. I feel sad. I feel shame, right? And women think that will often think that this is so weak and a man's going to disappear. No, if you do that with the right energy, where you're containing that energy, you're not putting it on a man with neediness or like trying to like manipulate him with an outcome or trying to blame him for how you feel. And it's just pure vulnerability, heart open. Not only is a man going to be like, holy shit, I just want to make you feel good, right? And it's going to make him more attracted to her. Like think about that whole cliche of, a woman's vulnerable and then he wants to have sex with you. Like, yeah, some men do that to take advantage. But another part of it is, that just makes a man horny, right? To see a woman's heart like that, like that's a turn on for a man. And so tapping into that. And when a woman's able to do that and be emotionally responsible and getting out of the stories and all the other bull crap, that's going to bring up a lot of pain for her. And instead of being silent as well, right? Because a lot of women stay silent. She's going to get into her feminine energy, and it's going to bring up so much pain for her to actually heal as well. And so just getting the words, the right words with the right energy allows you to get into your right masculine or feminine polarity and end up, the more that you do it and the more that you do it when you're interacting with other people, especially a partner, the more that you are going to heal everything that needs to be healed and just become increasingly masculine or increasingly feminine.
Should there also be some kind of bodily practices that a guy goes into martial arts or does something else with like men or go fishing or hunting or whatever, and that a woman would do more embodied practices like dancing or painting or yoga or something more expressive?
Yeah, I don't teach that as far as like, but I would suggest it, right? I think that that's a good idea because it can help you get more into that energy and feel it, and it feels good. It feels natural. It won't help that much in an actual relationship. Like it's the communication that's, because you can do all the dancing and whatever stuff in the world, martial arts as a man. But if you don't know how to communicate with your partner, you're going to revert right back into androgyny or into your reverse polarity.
Yeah, because bro, this is what I see. And this is the biggest hidden crisis in society right now. Besides the single mom crisis, it's the boys crisis, right? And there's a lot of these marketeers who are preying on the wounded masculine, on these boys, and they just think that they're just gonna jump in some mud with 5 guys and then suddenly they become a man, or do one workshop and change their life, and they pay a lot of money to just cry out, connect with men, be a bit alpha. But then after that workshop, they're back in their regular life. And I think a lot of these things, they're band-aids. You really need to go through the process and the journey. Yeah. And a lot of marketeers or people are preying on these wounded masculine boys, and it's not really fixing them or helping them in the long run. At least that's my opinion, right?
I agree. Yeah, I would say 95% or maybe more of all of the courses and other crap that's out there for both men and women are band-aids. They are band-aids that will give you a nice quick fix that make you feel good about yourself and think that you're You finally figured things out, but you're not, it's not what you really need to change the core of who you are, really go through your healing journey, all that kind of stuff. And I have a really big problem with it. Like I've seen that so much. And I've wasted money on that in the pickup community too, right? The whole Band-Aid solution thing. So I can see quite clearly what are Band-Aids and what is really will offer like deep change, right? And so my thing is, even though I'm focusing, I guess I kind of do both, where I will offer tools that can get instant results, right? Which will be just Band-Aids if that's all you want is the instant results, which I don't want anyone to stop with. But if you continue using those tools and you really take it seriously, you will go through a complete transformational journey in your love life, whether you're single or in a relationship. You just got to keep doing it no matter what.
Yeah, and it's also very close to my heart. And you can even see Jordan Peterson like crying about it when he actually talks about it, because it's such like an issue. I noticed a lot of times in the past when I worked, back then I was just focusing on high performance and not just on helping people get more clients and grow their business. When I was working with clients who found it difficult to put in the effort to be committed and they didn't know what they want, you know what happened 80% of the cases? They didn't have a strong father figure. Or they didn't have a strong father figure. That pattern is so prevalent, it stared me in the eyes. That these lost boys had no discernment, they didn't know what they want, they had no discipline, no commitment, and a lot of times it's because they had no or a very weak father figure.
Yeah, I believe it.
And
sure.
Oftentimes that also acts out with women. There's a lot of projection going on. They had a bad relationship with their dad. They had no father figure. And then they say, all men are like this. I wasn't loved by men, so all men are like this. So that's the same thing what happened with a girl that I met, and she was a radical feminist. And I was trying to convince her, like, listen, it's because you were raised by a single mom. She castrated you, she didn't make you she didn't castrate you, she sterilized you, and she took away your femininity. And she gave you an example of all the men will let you down, etc. And you became resentful of men. And you call yourself a feminist, but look at how you look at men and how you are in the world. It's very unfeminine. It's like very masculine. And that was also her process. And now she's helping women to become more feminine, which is absolutely beautiful. But oftentimes what you fight for is just a projection of your own unresolved personal wounds.
Yes. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's often, it does sound like she's made a ton of gains there, which is great. But unfortunately, that's often what you see in the coaching industry too, right? Is just the projection of stuff where you like, especially with masculine and teaching masculinity and femininity. I've seen this more in this industry than anywhere else, where people will make masculinity or femininity whatever they want it to be based on who they are and where they're at, right? So it's like it's masculinity based on my own wounds, femininity based on my own wounds. And probably the most extreme of that would be like these hardcore feminists that maybe think that this is somehow being feminine in some way, when it's like, no, you're more of a man than most men, right? And so, what like masculinity and femininity are specific things, specific energies. You don't just get to make any definition up based on where you are. And so that's a really big issue that I see in the industry of, it's skewed teachings that cause a lot of misperceptions, especially because this is very much like in the airy-fairy spiritual community, right? Where it's like vague language, vague terminology of things, which is just opening up the door for making things mean whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah, and we
you
don't,
and your clients.
And we don't know how much, we don't realize how much the culture narrative molds our perception of the world. We grew up with what? Like Terminator, Mel Gibson, Rambo. We still had these movies. You talk about certain pickup videos. We might shift it a bit to work more towards inner game, but there still was online. What happened on YouTube? They cracked down on all the pickup channels because it was manipulative, etc. So there's that narrow bandwidth of what people are allowed to see. So it's harder and harder to be plugged outside of the matrix. So the brainwashing is more and more, while the alternatives become more and more fringe. So that's the danger that I see. And that's why I also do my podcast here, to stand up for rebels with a cause and help people think critically, because they could just label what you do as he is manipulating men how to sleep with women. Even though you build up men in their masculinity, you create healthy, thriving relationships, they could just say, no, everybody who's a masculinity coach is a manipulator. And in a year, 2 years, none of this material is to be found on the mainstream media and social media anymore.
Yeah. And that's such a huge issue in itself, right? And there's that great quote, I can't remember the guy's name, but the first they came for the communists, and I wasn't a communist, so I didn't speak up. They're coming for everybody. They are coming for everybody, and they will start with the most extreme, right? The pickup artists, like the conspiracy theorists, especially the hardcore ones, anyone that's like very pro natural health. But then they're coming for then the next people. They'll come for me eventually. I know they will. And they're coming for everybody else. And so we've got to continue speaking up about this.
That's why it's so important that we build our communities. And if everybody is like on Apple, they can spread my message of freedom of speech by leaving a review. You can also check out Zach to support him. Because what I'm seeing right now, and this is not a conspiracy, they are developing these technologies that that's also all these social media platforms like Facebook is going slower and slower because they're measuring more and more data. As soon as you do a live video, as soon as you make a post, they summarize all your words. And if there's a sentence that they don't like, or they find you a bigot or, a racist, etc., just one sentence without content, text, without intention, they can brand you. You can be labeled and you can be virtually character assassinate, and bam, all your followers, all your influence that you've been building up for years, removed by the algorithm without having anything to say. And this is increasingly what's happening, right? Online, censoring of opinions. People have to conform. They can't think critically. And that's such a pity. Because you learned a lot about life. I learned a lot about life. I did some stupid shit. You did some stupid shit. But I reflected about it and I became a better person by negotiating with the world, right? And for me to just follow the prescribed narrative, that is living like an automaton. Like, what kind of freedom of expression and meaning is there to be found?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything that I have learned that has helped me in my life definitely did not come from any mainstream narrative. That's for sure. Another popular quote, I think this was, I can't remember who it is, but everything popular is wrong. There really is.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I learned during everything this last year. A lot of things that I learned about the truth of things is just a story being written by the conquerors or those who want to control people, and we're just being manipulated and kept stupid and dumb.
Yeah.
I think that's why they're making a lot of smartphones and smart equipment, because those things make us dumb.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So we can use it now to our advantage to have a bigger reach and reach more people while we can, and build up our communities, build up healthy, thriving men. Because I think we need leadership more than ever now. If people want to get in touch, where can they find out more about you, and tell a bit more about the programs that you're offering to build strong men and to build vulnerable, expressive women?
Sure. So my website is relationshipofyourdreams.com. And on my website, you can find basically every link that you need to. So I run a course for men, learning to become dominant leaders. I run a course for women, learning how to be radiant, vulnerable women, and going like really deep as far as it goes. I also run a paid men's group and a paid women's group where members they've been learning from me for such a long time that it's just amazing. And I got 60 hours of videos in those groups. What else do I have? Obviously, one-on-one coaching. I've got 3 books. There's also a link to my website for those. They're on Amazon. And I've also got a free Facebook group for anyone who's just like, yeah, this guy sounds like he's making sense. I want to find out more first. So the link to that is also on my website. So that's Relationship of Your Dreams. And so I teach real femininity, real masculinity, and I give real tools to very easily tap into that energy, stay in that energy, get women to inspire their men to really step up and lead. And I teach men how to lead their woman into letting go, submitting, and just expressing how they feel instead of
Last
trying to
question. What do
control
you
things.
think is the role of parents? Like, how should they treat their boys and girls right now to go a bit against the cultural narrative that is increasingly being pushed right now?
Well, I think that parents should definitely encourage their boys to like speak up, start leading. I mean, at this point, you know, both men and women really need to do that because this society is going completely out of the toilet, and there's so much that needs to be spoken up with. But more specifically, or boys really need to be taught how to lead, being allowed to really make mistakes, and you know, giving lots of responsibilities is really, really important, and make mistakes with those responsibilities. For women, I think the most important thing that that parents can do is really get them to especially their fathers, right, is to like take care of them, to make them feel safe, to emotionally open up, to be really expressive, because this stuff starts in childhood, right? And most women, they're only learning masculine communication. They're often shamed for feminine communication, right? So doing that as early as possible, because this isn't just, here's the thing, this isn't just something that should be done in relationships, right?
Mhm.
Imagine a world where like all men and women were like this with each other all the time, right? I've encouraged women, listen, just be really vulnerable on Facebook, right? Just be really expressive with how you feel, and just block the shit out of anybody who disagrees with or who's like shaming you for it, right? Because women are so scared to do that. But what are they? They're scared to be who they are. And you shouldn't just feel comfortable to be who you are with a really devotional man who will make you feel safe. You need to learn to make yourself feel safe and get rid of anyone who doesn't approve of that.
Are there any tools that you think would be useful to check out? Some books that really were influential, both for a man and both for a woman, to work on their communication, on their devotion, or on their leadership?
Honestly, as far as tools and how to step up as a man and let go as a woman, the best books I could really recommend is the 3 that I've written. So I've written Don't Let Her Lead. That's more geared for men. Worthy Woman and Irresistibly Feminine, which are both more geared for women. But honestly, all 3, I think, if communication is something that you want to work on, I think all 3 are extremely useful. I haven't actually read much as far as masculine and feminine polarity stuff go. I like David Data's Way of the Superior Man. I thought that was really great. It's more difficult. Like I get very like hands-on, like this is a how-to book of how to apply this stuff. He doesn't offer much of that. It's still a great book, and I think that especially every man should read that, because like for mindset and just general understanding, it's fantastic. But there wasn't much as far as communication skills or anything like that.
One thing I'm like still curious about is like, because you're controversial, because you go against the culture narrative and stuff, from the female clients that you have, what are some words that you heard from them? What are some expressions that they told you after going through your coaching? Because it's almost like unplugging them from the matrix, right? Matrix comes from matrice, which is womb, almost from the toxic womb, you know? So what did women say to you, or how did they feel after going through your coaching process?
Well, they like certainly extremely grateful, and it's great because when they go through this process, they learn how to express in a way that a man's going to really love hearing, right? So I love that too. A lot of my testimonials are just very feeling based, but like, oh, I feel so happy, I feel so free, I feel, you know, like I feel home, like I finally found like who I am, and can just I just feel free to be who I am. Yeah, and like often for the first time in their lives, because they've been stuck in this more masculine way of operating and been disconnected from their heart, right? Like the biggest thing I can say I help women with is getting them reconnected to their heart and expressing from their heart. And it is sad how many women are really disconnected from it.
How can they feel it? Like how can a man feels like I am not in my masculine? Like what are some experiences? How can a woman feel like, yeah, I'm really not in touch with my feminine? Are there some ways that they can feel in the dynamic of their relationship, in the dynamic of themselves, that they're like, I'm stuck, I'm not where I naturally am supposed to be?
Yeah, well, if a woman is feeling drained and stressed out, she's definitely in her masculine. And if she feels like really unsafe, probably in her masculine too, or with a man who is just not devotional in any way, not strong as a leader. A man's going to feel really weak. He's going to feel emasculated. He's not going to feel powerful. He's not going to feel strong. He's going to feel, just like I think weakness is the best way to describe it. Like when a man is in his masculine energy, he feels powerful. He feels in control.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for sharing your insights on how to have the balanced masculine and the balanced feminine and have a beautiful polarity. I fully support your mission, and let's create some strong masculine leaders and some radiant feminine.
Yes.
Not leaders, but I don't know what to describe it.
I got stuck on the same thing. Yeah.
I don't know. You can't say like followers, but someone who's also standing in their light and standing in their radiance, right? So they can both be like a king and a very nourishing feminine queen by inside.
Yes.
Thanks for creating this. It's a mission I fully support. And thanks so much for being on the podcast, Zach.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment. And if you're a coach or consultant and you want to scale your online business or maximize your productivity, check out the show notes to find out more about Philip and his coaching programs. Rent over.